He thought it was just a routine stop, a little intimidation, a little power flex, same as always. But when he opened the trunk, his eyes froze. The arrogance drained from his face, and his hand trembled as he picked up the document inside. The bold print at the top hit him like a punch to the gut. How could this be? Why was his name on it? Have you ever witnessed the moment when a predator realizes they're the prey? Before we dive into the story, let us know where you're watching from. Share your city or country in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking stories like this. Tomorrow, we'll bring you another inspiring story, tailor-made for you. The story begins. He thought it was just a routine traffic stop. A few threats, a little humiliation, all according to his playbook. But as he opened my trunk and stared in stunned silence at a document that would change his life forever, I knew the game was on. Sometimes the hunter becomes the hunted, and tonight was going to be a night he'd never forget. You know those moments when you feel something's off even before it happens? Like when the air gets too still before a storm. Yeah, that was me driving down Main Street. Drizzle on the windshield, wipers working overtime, and everything just felt wrong. I was heading home after a long day, the kind where your brain feels like mush and all you crave is a hot shower and some quiet. Then I saw them, red and blue lights flashing in my rearview mirror. Police cruiser. Here we go, I muttered. I wasn't speeding, my taillights were fine, and my plates were legit, so what was it? Oh, I knew what it was, driving while black classic. I pulled over, my hands already at 10 and 2 on the wheel because we all know. The drill. The cruiser pulled up and I watched as a large figure in a crisp uniform stepped out, his boots crunching on the wet asphalt. His whole demeanor screamed, I run this town. And honestly, I was just too tired for this. License and registration, he barked as he approached my window. No greeting, no good evening, just straight to the point. His tone wasn't a request, it was a command, like I'd already done something wrong. Good evening, officer, I said, keeping my voice steady. May I ask why you pulled me over? You were driving suspiciously slow, he said, narrowing his eyes at me like I just insulted his mother. I blinked. Suspiciously slow, was that even a thing? It's raining, I said. I was just being careful. He leaned in closer, droplets of water dripping from the brim of his hat. Careful. Huh? You got something to hide in this car. Buddy? There it was, that buddy again. Not sir, not officer, just buddy. Delivered with enough disdain to fill a football stadium. Officer, I have nothing to hide, I said calmly. Everything's in order. I reached slowly, emphasizing the word slowly, to get my license and registration from the glove compartment. The last thing I needed was for him to think I was reaching for a weapon. He snatched the documents from my hand and glanced at them like he couldn't be bothered. Stay put, he ordered, marching back to his cruiser. I watched him in my rearview mirror, half expecting him to call for backup or pull some other stunt. Something about him just screamed this ain't gonna end well. When he returned, he looked annoyed, like he'd been hoping to find a reason to escalate things and came up empty. Step out of the car, he said. Excuse me, officer? I asked, keeping my tone polite but firm. I haven't done anything wrong. Step out of the car, he repeated, emphasizing each word like I was deaf. I sighed and complied, because let's face it, arguing was pointless. I stepped out into the drizzle, the damp chill seeping into my jacket almost immediately. Open the trunk, he commanded, gesturing towards the back of my car. Officer, with all due respect, you need a warrant for that, I said. His face twisted into a smirk, the kind that made my stomach churn. See, that's where you're wrong, he said. I can search whatever I want. Actually, no you can't, I countered, my voice steady. But he wasn't listening. He was already heading for the trunk, fumbling with his keys like he owned the car. Officer, you're violating my rights, I said, raising my voice, but he completely ignored me, popping the trunk like it was his personal treasure trove. That's when he spotted it, a sleek, gray document case nestled neatly in the corner of the trunk. What's this? He asked, his tone suddenly shifting to a mix of curiosity and suspicion. Personal property, I said sharply. You have no right. But he was already reaching for it. My heart pounded as he unlatched the case and flipped it open. For a split second, I wanted to laugh at the look of eagerness on his face, like a kid opening a birthday present. Then his expression froze. His face paled as his eyes scanned the document lying neatly on top. Any confidence he had evaporated in an instant. His jaw tightened and his hand trembled slightly as he held the paper up to his face. Officer Jack H. Hendrick, I said, watching the realization dawn on him. Now, would you care to explain why you just violated the rights of your new boss? Let me tell you something about guys like Officer Hendrick. They don't know when to quit. Seriously, this dude was acting like he'd just cracked the biggest case of his life, and all he had was my empty trunk. Well, nothing except that gray document case. Now, as I watched him pull it out, I felt this weird mix of disappointment and excitement. Yeah, I'll admit it, there was a part of me that was curious to see how this was going to play out, because he had no idea the storm he just walked into. What's in here? He asked, holding up the case like it was some kind of trophy. His smirk was back, but it looked strained, like he was trying to convince himself that he was still in control. Put it down, I said, trying to keep my voice as calm as possible, even though inside I was screaming. That's private property and you've overstepped your bounds. He ignored me, big shocker, and flipped the latches on the case. It popped open with a soft click and he tilted it to peer inside. That's when the magic happened. His eyes landed on the top sheet of paper, and you'd have thought he'd just seen a ghost. The color drained from his face so fast I was almost certain he was going to faint right there in the rain. He squinted at the document, then blinked a few times like he was hoping it would magically transform into something else. Wait, what the hell? He muttered, but I heard him loud and clear. His voice was stripped of its smugness and now he just sounded worried. Oh, how the tables have turned. What's the matter, Officer Hendrick? I asked, leaning casually against my car. Something catch your eye? He didn't answer. His hand was trembling as he held the paper up to his face. I could see the big, bold letters at the top of the document from where I was standing. Notice of termination. Below that was his name, plain as day, followed by a list of offenses that would make anyone think twice about hiring this guy to even babysit. This can't be real, he stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. Then he looked up at me, and I swear I've never seen a man go from cocky to terrified so fast in my life. What the hell is this? That, my friend, I said, folding my arms and giving him a slow, deliberate smile, is a very official document. And you're holding it without permission, by the way. He blinked at me like I'd just spoken to him in ancient Greek. Permission? You? What's going on here? Why don't you read the whole thing, officer? Maybe it'll clear up some of your confusion, I said, tilting my head towards the paper. I could almost see the gears turning in his head. And let me tell you, they were grinding loudly. His eyes darted back to the paper, and I watched as the words sank in: the offenses, the complaints, the immediate termination recommendation, the whole 9 yards. Then finally, the signature at the bottom. Michael Peterson, Chief of Police. You're... He started, but the words got stuck in his throat. He looked up at me, his face ashen like the clouds overhead. This can't be real. You're not. I'm not what? I said, raising an eyebrow. Your new boss. Sorry to disappoint you, but yes, that's exactly who I am. His mouth opened and closed a few times, but no words came out. It was like watching a fish flop around on dry land, and honestly, I was enjoying every minute of it. Look, this has got to be a mistake, he finally managed to stammer out. You shouldn't... Let me stop you right there, I said, holding up my hand, before you say something even more stupid than what's already come out of your mouth. I was brought in to clean up this precinct, and guess what? Your name was at the top of my list. His arms fell to his sides, the paper still clutched between his fingers. He looked like he'd just been hit by a freight train. But look, we can work this out, right? I didn't mean anything by it. Oh, you didn't mean anything by it? I interrupted, my voice dripping with sarcasm. So when you pulled me over for no reason, searched my car without a warrant, and opened my private property, it was all just one big misunderstanding. Come on, man, he said, his tone turning desperate. I didn't know who you were, and that makes it okay? I retorted. What if I wasn't your boss? Would that make your actions acceptable? Because I have to tell you, Hendrik, that's not how the law works. Not anymore. He stared at me, his face a mask of panic and disbelief. I could see the gears turning in his head, probably trying to figure out a way out of the massive hole he'd just dug himself. Spoiler alert. There was no escape. Please, he said, his voice barely audible. Just give me a chance to explain. I shook my head. Oh, don't worry, Hendrik, you'll have a chance to explain. Just not to me. And with that, I pulled out my phone and made the call that would officially end his career. The rain was still coming down, but for the first time all night, I felt completely in control. So there we stood, me in the rain, cool as a cucumber, and Officer Hendrik looking like he'd just been run over by a bus. The paper in his hand was practically smoldering with the speed he tossed it back into the document case. He opened his mouth, probably to spout some excuse or desperate plea, but I wasn't about to give him the satisfaction. Go ahead, I said, crossing my arms and leaning back against my car. Say whatever you think is going to save your job. I could use a good laugh. Look, he started, his voice trembling like a leaf in the wind. This was just a misunderstanding, okay? I didn't know who you were and... Oh, so it's okay to violate someone's rights as long as they're not your boss? I cut him off, my tone as sharp as a knife. Because that's what I'm hearing, Hendrik. Am I right? He blinked at me, his mouth opening and closing like a gasping fish. No, that's not... Look, I'm just saying maybe we don't have to take this any further. I can fix this. I'll apologize. I let out a bitter laugh. That's rich. Tell me, Hendrik, how many people have you pulled this stunt on? How many people didn't have a document in their trunk that made you back off? His silence spoke volumes. He looked down at the pavement like it had all the answers, but we both knew the truth. This wasn't the first time he'd done this, and it wouldn't be the last if he didn't run into me. Yeah, that's what I thought, I said, shaking my head. You're not sorry you did it, you're sorry you got caught. Come on, man, he said, his voice dripping with desperation. You gotta understand, this job, it's all I have. I made a mistake, okay? But I can learn, I can change, please don't do this. Stared at him for a long moment, letting his words hang in the air. The rain was still coming down, soaking both of us, but I didn't care. This wasn't about him, it was about the people who came before me, the ones who didn't have the chance to stand up for themselves, the ones who didn't have the power to say enough. You want to change? I said finally, my voice firm and cold. Then prove it. But you're not going to do it in my police department. His face crumpled like a paper bag, and for a second, I thought he might actually start crying. You can't do this, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I need this job. No, I said, what you need is a wake-up call and consider this it. I pulled out my phone and dialed the number I'd been saving for exactly this moment. The line rang once before a familiar voice answered. Chief Peterson. The crisp greeting came from the other end. It's me, I said. I've got Officer Hendrik here. He's terminated, effective immediately. Notify HR and make sure the paperwork is expedited. Hendrik's eyes widened as the reality of the situation crashed down on him like a freight train. Wait, you don't have to do this, he stammered, his voice rising in panic. Please, I'll do whatever you want. I held up my hand to silence him. It's done, Hendrik. Clean out your locker and turn in your badge and gun by the end of the day, and don't even think about filing an appeal. The complaints against you have been well documented. I ended the call without waiting for a response. When I looked back at Hendrik, he was frozen in place, his face a mask of disbelief and utter horror. It was the kind of expression you'd expect from someone who just realized their worst nightmare had come true. Here's a piece of advice, I said, stepping closer to him. Next time you put on that uniform, if anyone is foolish enough to give you another one, remember what it represents. Protect and serve, not harass and intimidate. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, drenched and defeated, as I picked up the document case and closed my trunk. What would you do if you were in this situation? Have you ever faced injustice and stood up for yourself? Share your thoughts in the comments. You never know, your story might inspire someone else to find the courage to act. If you found this story meaningful, please Please share it with your friends and family to spread the message of justice, respect, and accountability. Every voice, every small action can make a big difference. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more heartwarming stories. See you in the next video. Thank you for supporting the channel. Please like, share, and subscribe to receive the latest updates. These stories are collected from various sources and do not represent any individual or organization. They are shared for the purpose of spreading human values in life and have been rewritten with the assistance of AI. If there are any errors, please forgive us with understanding. Wishing you all the best in life.